I've been trying.
Bipartisan cooperation and a string of
Okay, Mitch. Anything else you want to say, or should we just go back to your office? Do you want to say anything else to the press?
Go ahead, John.
I'll take it back. Let's go back to you.
Go ahead, John.
well, the president called to check on me. I told him I got sandbagged.
Oh, nice. How are you feeling now, sir? How are you feeling now?
I'm fine.
Have you seen a doctor? Are you going to see
Any
a
idea
doctor?
what happened?
Huh?
Any idea what happened?
I'm fine. That's the important
Dehydrated?
part.
Whoa. Turtle running out of gas. What the fuck? What's happening, Eric?
It's called hibernation.
Oh, Jesus. Right. Dear Lord. These are the people leading us. These are not the lower level cats.
Hey, you know what? We had Feinstein on one side. The Republicans said, hold my beer.
You know, I paid top dollar for a mud wrestling event between McConnell and Feinstein. Just get him in the ring, mono off Feinstein, and let him go. You know, free drinks for everyone, Texas cage match, any way you want to slice it. Winner takes all in the Senate, control of the Senate, to be determined by a huge mud wrestling event between Mitch McConnell and Dianne Feinstein.
Hey, you got my dollars.
Okay.
Where do I sign up?
That'd be the greatest pay-per-view of all time.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right.
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. So
Yeah,
Howard
right.
Cosell imitation of the George Frazier, Joe Frazier, George Foreman fight, which I think was in New Orleans, when Foreman knocked down Frazier a number of times in the first and second round. You remember that fight, Baris?
Down goes Frazier.
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
Big arm just bang, and you're just looking at Frazier like, oh God, Joe, move. Move, Joe.
He looked like he was frozen. He was like frozen, Rich.
Oh God. And
that's
love
why
Joe
later.
Frazier.
That's why later Ali called him the mummy, because he was going to make a mummy out of him in Africa, and indeed he became the mummy. The arms came down. The arms came down, and he was the mummy.
Yeah, I don't
One
think
of the great nicknames of all time, as opposed to the turtle who we just saw frozen in space.
I don't think I don't think most people expected Ali to survive that fight, and that's one of the greatest comeback fights.
One of the greatest fights of all. You're talking about Ali versus Foreman. Yeah, in Africa. Yeah, in Africa. That was one of the greatest fights of all time.
So good.
I mean, everybody loves the Ali Frazier fights, but Ali Foreman, where he makes him into the mummy, wow. Yeah. Look at that one if you get a chance on YouTube, folks.
That's got to be the one, Mark, that did Ali in. Finally, I'm talking about his brain, because to take a beating like that and
to the ribs.
Oh God! Yeah. And big arms. For people who don't know and never watched George Foreman, Big George, when he was young, that man swung with his whole body and his giant arm.
Zaire to Kenya. I mean, his arms, dude, it was ridiculous.
That's why when he hits Joe Frazier, and you guys go back and look at it if you've never seen these fights, when he's hitting Joe, you're like, you're just, please, Joe, move. You just get so hard to watch.
I think Joe was just stunned that somebody hit him that hard in his life, because he was like a statue.
Yeah.
He never went down. And then, of course, he went down a couple of times.
He was a bull. I love
He
Joe
was a bull. He was a bull.
Everybody loves Ali. Ali gets all the credit. I always loved Joe Frazier. I liked his attitude. Yeah. I liked who he was. Ali was, he pulled, I can't go to Vietnam, and half the country hated him for it. But Joe Frazier was a very different kind of guy, and he grew up dirt poor, and he was like, nobody owes me anything. I fight and earn what I get, and all I ever had is these. Remember, all I ever have is these. And that's it. I mean, Joe, he's exactly the kind of man that, I was raised to admire, where you put the work in, you get what you get. Nobody owes you anything.
Well, don't forget, Sylvester Stallone steals his life story, and Frazier doesn't shut up about it for 10 years until he has to sit down dinner with Sylvester Stallone, and there was a payout behind a private payout finally from Stallone that he had taken, which is pretty obviously.
But he did, though.
Joe Frazier's life story.
He did take Joe Frazier's life story. He really did.
The punching of the meat carcasses.
He just made him Italian, Mark.
He made him a white Italian guy. You talk about cultural appropriation. I mean, the punching of the meat carcasses in the meat locker in Philadelphia, that was Joe Frazier, bro.
Yeah.
Running up the stairs, that was Frazier.
Yeah. Maybe he wasn't the prettiest boxer at first, but he could take a beating and throw a punch.
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
And ironically,
he goes down like nobody's home. When Howard's doing that, Joe is just.
This is Howard Cosell at the ringside. Let's see if we can get a word from the champ. Champ, what happened? Did you see? How about when Howard Cosell is in Bananas with Woody Allen, and he's going to the bedside to see if they consummated the marriage by having sex in bed. He's all through the movie playing himself completely straight. This is Howard Cosell. We're down here at the bedside of the champ. Let's get a word from. Are you exhausted, champ? I'm okay. I feel good, Howard. I feel good.
And him and Ali, they're back and forth. They're classic. They're
ironically, though, the fiction character got the statue.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But
you could never have that kind of dialogue today.
I mean, Frazier's revered in Philadelphia.
Oh, God. You could never have that kind of dialogue today.
Right.
Whether it's Frazier and Ali or Ali and Howard, like they just, you can't say those things anymore. Even to some extent with mixed martial arts, they try to get as crazy as as anybody. But I don't know. They just say things back then that people just aren't, it's not that.
Well, how about another guy? Another guy who came out of Pennsylvania, Larry Holmes. It was Ali's sparring partner trying to be Ali years later. He could barely string a sentence together, Larry Holmes, and he tried to become, a chatterbox like Ali. It was just embarrassing.
What was Larry's nickname?
Oh, I forget.
Oh my God, what was his nickname? It was this game years ago.
Eastern Assassin or something, or wasn't he from Easton?
Yeah, something great. It was great. He had a great nickname. Yeah. And I remember there was this, I don't know, we were young. I must have been 10, 11. And it had this like Genesis game or something, maybe with all the greats in it. They had Holmes, the Eastern Assassin. That's it. That's it. Yeah. You had Holmes, of course, later you'd get Ali, but they had, Marvelous Marvin Hagler. You could go in different weight divisions. And Thomas the Hitman Hearns. I used to love Thomas Hearns. He was, and Roberto Hands of Stone Duran, man. Oh,
another one for you.
That was another one.
Chuck Wepner, the Bayonne bleeder. This guy made a career. Now, the only reason I know Chuck Wepner is he ended up being a liquor salesman in upstate New York, and he used to service all the bars that I drank in Hunter Mountain. And he would.
You went to Hunter Mountain?
Yeah, well, see the episode. I ran the ski shop at Hunter Mountain, Rich. So I was like engulfed in that culture.
What?
Yeah. I was right in the lodge, bro, running the whole operation at Emilio's ski shop in the lodge at Hunter Mountain. So Chuck Wepner used to come.
My personal slice of the world, Mark.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great. That's great.
It used to be. I love it.
Hunter was great, bro.
Spent a whole show talking about how you want to really see a beautiful Christmas, and if you get lucky and it snows, you just can't beat it up there. You just can't.
At the Eastern Catskills, for people who don't know what we're talking about, as opposed to the Western Catskills, which is Grossinger's and the Concord and the Jewish Alps. The Eastern Catskills were known as the Italian Alps, Rich.
Yes.
Right, as you're well aware. They're a little different in culture.
Speaking of boxing, My godfather, when I was young, I used to love watching boxing with him, probably totally inappropriate for that age, but he took me when I was young to see an up and coming fighter who was from the area, and his name was Mike Tyson.
Oh,
And I saw him live.
Why did you see me? Why didn't you just buy a ticket and watch me on
My mother was so pissed. She was so, because I'm not going to lie to you, Mark. I came home afraid. Like I've seen, I was afraid. Like this guy, and he was nice. But when he hit somebody,
he's the sweetest guy in the world. I've known
sweetest
Mike.
guy, man. He was so nice to the kids.
I knew Mike when I lived in Greene County, and he lived in Catskill, New York, and I lived in
That's
Catskill.
where he lived at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And I knew him back then, but I met him years later, and we became very close, like 25 years later. We'd both been to jail with the same judge, Judge McDonald in Catskill, New York, who came. It's a long story, but it's one of our episodes.
My French.
Eric knows where it is. I forgot where it is, but it's maybe in the ski shop episode. But yeah, Tyson told me how he would go back to Red Hook, Brooklyn on the weekends, even though he had his father figure training him up there. He would rob people just for the excitement, even though he didn't need the money.
Yeah.
He didn't need the money. He just loved to rob. He loved to commit crime. And he would go back on the weekends and rob people at gunpoint.
Speaking of
I can't remember
crimes,
where.
Mark,
What's that?
Speaking of committing crimes, you had some poll questions you wanted to get to Rich.
Yeah. Throw.
I'm sorry. We got off on his box. Sorry.
I'll just say this. I think the fight lasted 3 punches. I can't remember. Maybe you know where it was, but he used to fight locally. He wasn't that big at the time. It lasted maybe 3 punches, Mark. He hit the guy twice in the body and once in the head, and it was over. And it actually scared me because I never seen anything like it as a child. And the whole ring shakes when he hits somebody. He's like,
yeah. When you hug him, it feels like you're wrapping your arms around a tree trunk.
That's Iron Mike, baby.
I swear to God, you could barely get your arms around, and it feels like you're hugging a tree.
Yeah, when it came from his legs too, so that doesn't surprise me. I mean, you could see the power came from his legs and the way when he moved, when he hooked, his whole body went into his foot pivoted perfectly. There's like people who are just born to throw a punch, and that man was just.
Remember that he punched the guy in the face in a clothing store on 125th Street.
Oh my God! Yeah, that was later. Later. Yeah. That's crazy. Well, what was the question? What are the questions about?
No, it wasn't. It was like more about this thing that I've been kicking around for over 2 years and polling in my mind. And I'm not a polling guy, but I've been meaning to ask you this for about a year. And it's my idea of polling the Democratic voters about their perceptions of what they would do. For instance, are you willing to break the law to prevent Trump from becoming president? And they're kind of like social questions, Rich, about how far they are willing to go in terms of law and order in the opposite direction to prevent the Republicans from taking power, to prevent Trump. A whole series of questions that only you could word properly that would explain to people how they think, not just about who's going to win this election or what this and that about abortion, but about their view of the world, Rich. Are you willing to break the law to prevent Trump from getting the presidency again? Would you agree to put Trump in jail for the rest of his life? You know, more like avant-garde kind of questions, Rich. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Eric said you could ask both sides. You know, I mean, you get a
because
percentage of the ranking.
That would tell you what each side's perspective is. Like if you say to a Democrat, would you be willing to break the law to prevent your opponent from winning? And you ask the Republicans that same question, would it not be telling when each side had different results? And it can be interpreted in different ways. Like, is one side more serious about winning because they'd be willing to do anything and the other side has no will? Or is the one side criminal and the other side honorable?
Exactly.
It's just interesting.
Right. Are you willing to allow people to rob stores to get what they want? You know, about robbery and you know, these strong arm robberies and violence and crime. Are you willing to get rid of police entirely for your utopian society? We've got to ask them these questions, Rich. We have to bring them out of the darkness and into the light and show the American people what they're willing to do. where they're going because they discuss this privately over dinner. And we need to pull that information, their feelings, out of them so the whole world can see how freaking crazy they are. And I'm guessing that these numbers are going to go through the roof, Rich.
I'll tell you, I don't know why we didn't continue with this. We had a similar idea, and this is what I don't have it, but I can get it for you guys if you want to take a look at it. One thing that we did ask Mark was, I think it was May of 2020, before the election, but I think the pandemic was going on, and it was very clear they were moving to, widespread vote by mail. That's what they were trying to do. And we were trying to poll people's concerns about it. And at the end of the day, we did start to ask, and it was asking both sides, whether or not if you received a ballot that was from someone who, for instance, lived at your house 10 years ago and is still going to get an unsolicited ballot, would you consider, filling in that ballot and returning it, or would you not because you were afraid about, getting caught? It was very clear just from, and I got to dig this up. If I'd have known you were going to ask this, I would have.
Yeah, I mean, I could write out these questions for you. I mean, you could then translate them into narcissism.
Democrats, Mark, thought that, how can I say this right without being unfair to them? Democrats were willing to do it and told us they were, because in their mind, they weren't the bad guys, even if it meant breaking the law.
Punch a Nazi.
That's all right.
Yes, stop a Nazi. Stop a Hitler.
It's okay, but we need to get those percentages. Right. I think that would break through into mainstream media if you could come up with a number like 72% of registered Democrats agree they're willing to break the law to prevent Trump from running for office. I mean, I'm just making this up. But I mean, if you ask these questions, what's that?
I think it was like 52% who said they would. And very close, we also asked them whether or not, if they were the ones in charge of counting votes, would you turn a blind eye to a signature that didn't match?
That's a good one.
Would you make sure it was strict? And I'll tell you what, Mark, like 47% said I would look the other way. And it was like 30-something% of Republicans, but like 47 or 8% of Democrats said I'll look the other way.
I mean, you could list it as how far are you willing to go to win the election, and then put A, B, C, D, and E.
That's a good
a ranking of what you'd be willing to do. Break the law.
We're going to give you 10 things. Tell me whether or not you would be willing to do it or not. So if it means winning an election. Yeah, that's really, I love that idea. People, I'll tell you what, we'll do that, Mark. We'll do this. I like this a lot.
This has been haunting me for over a year now. I've been meaning to ask you.
I'll put this in the next public polling project.
Okay, I didn't want to bust in because I don't know the science of polling that well. But I do know these questions that have been haunting me about, because I come from the other side, and I know this is how they think. I just want the numbers to be out there so people can see how freaking crazy they are. Are you willing to defund and eliminate police? Not defund. Defund is a complete vague,
totally different thing.
Completely different thing. It could be reduction of budget. It could be diversion of budget. That's a whole different thing. Are you willing to eliminate police in the United States?
Yeah.
Are you in favor of the FBI? Do you like the CIA more than any organ? I mean, avant-garde questions that can be phrased to make them think like they think. The questions have to be worded like they talk and they think. For them, is my humble opinion, will feel comfortable to honestly answer them. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a key to them letting their hair down a little bit in a polling question if the verbiage is similar to the way they talk. Just an opinion.
Something even before that. Do you remember Reality Winner? She got caught leaking stuff to try to get Trump in trouble, and she was leaking out of context. It wasn't even legitimate. We asked people about, whether or not they felt she was justified doing that. And I'll tell you, Democrats were like 100%, but not 100%. It was like 78%.
Should Julian Assange die in prison? How about that for a question? I mean, these are straight up bold questions, Rich. Not where they meander, not meandering questions. Straight up bold questions. I'd love to see the percentages of Democrats who would respond to these bold questions?
Rasmussen, I think a majority told Rasmussen that they would support locking people up in camps who don't get vaccines.
Okay, that's a great one. That's a great
crazy. Do you
That's
remember
a
that? Remember that, Eric? It was like, I don't know. It was majority, Mark. It was like a big majority.
If apprehended, should Edward Snowden be given the death penalty?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good
I mean,
one.
they could be all over the map politically. I mean, interest-wise, should we invade Moscow by the end of the year? I'm just curious. I mean, I'm just curious about the numbers of these kind of questions. I don't know that the American people know how the other half thinks. And
I'll tell you what, I'm thinking along the lines of like some kind of extreme form of punishment for Trump if he's found guilty of like sedition.
Absolutely.
I bet you a huge number would support hanging him at the rafters.
Dude, that's exactly where I'm going with this. Should the January 6th prisoners ever be released from jail? I mean, make it bold. Make these freaking bold questions.
And Barnes and I was just, what was it, earlier today? I was just talking to Will Scharf on the show about this. Barnes and I, a while ago, because it was like at the height of the January 6th commission, we asked the country whether or not they thought these were people who were guilty of some kind of violent insurrection. Most of the country was kind of split, but maybe like 38 said, yeah, it was violent insurrection. Most of them just said it's a protest gone awry. But in DC, more than 90% said that these were cop killers who tried to take over the government. I mean, every single fake thing they believed. And of course, what do you do someone who commits treason or sedition, Mark?
Well, yeah,
I mean,
here's another one. Do we need a media bill of rights to prevent the mainstream media from consistently lying to the American public? How about that for a question?
Yeah,
that needs to be avant-garde type questions that you normally wouldn't see in your type of polling or Rasmussen or anybody's polling. When I see these polling questions, I always look and go, they seem to be on both sides of the question. You know what I mean? They're not direct. I always get the impression.
Well, they're doing that on purpose. That's why.
I know. Right, I get it. Yeah.
They're trying to. But I like the idea of seeing, especially with an election, how far, further than what we did before, how far people, absolutely, because
you just say, how far are you willing to go to win the 2024 presidential election with Joe Biden? How far are you willing to go? So you list like 6 things: willing to commit, willing to commit espionage, willing to lie, willing to cheat, willing to break the law.
Having steps, though, little stages. Like,
Absolutely, Eric. Absolutely.
Kind of like a push where you're like, not only push in the poll sense, I mean push in like the mentalist sense, where you get them comfortable answering you.
Right. It's an anchor.
Would you vote for your own Democratic candidate if he was convicted of a crime?
Yeah.
I mean, those kind of questions.
What was it? In Georgia, we also asked whether or not they thought Joe Biden legitimately won, or if it came after the question I was telling you about before, or do you think that people look the other way, and just put things through to that weren't matching, that weren't verified? And if they did, are you all right with that? Over almost 4 in 10 Democrats did not. But first of all, they said, I don't think Joe Biden really won.
He's frozen up, so I'm going to ask another question right now.
Oh, you didn't hear that?
He's not. He was there. I can hear him.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Seems frozen.
Yeah, so like 4 in 10 Democrats.
Everybody stop for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
When would you invoke the 25th Amendment for Joe Biden? Before the election or after the election is my question.
To vote.
Yeah. When would you prefer to invoke the 25th Amendment regarding Joe Biden's mental condition, before the election or after the election?
First of all, we'd have to tell them, most of them, what the 25th Amendment is. No, I'm serious. We'd have to
have that as a little preamble. You could have that as a preamble.
Yeah, you'd have to give them a little bit of a prompt. But just to let you know what I was saying before, 40% of Democrats in Georgia did not think that he won the state of Georgia, but they didn't give a damn. So they didn't care. They wanted the W, and that's it.
That's it. I mean,
that's a good question.
If you're a little vague.
If your candidate wins and you know that is unfair, are you okay with that result?
Again, these are soft, Eric. That's too soft.
No, I know, but that could be one question.
Okay.
And then You don't want to go right in and say, what crime would you commit to get your guy
Yes,
in?
I do. I want to
Oh,
go
no, but
right
that-
in.
But you don't want to jump right into it.
You want to
No,
go
I don't
and
care how you do it. Eventually, I want
you
to get to
stage
those
it
questions.
up. You stage it up. Like you ask the question like I just asked now. And then later on you say, what would you be willing to do for your client to win? And
A lot of people too. A lot of people, there's got to be something you're going to have to like some kind of indicator to let, or at least make you suspect when someone's lying. We have these social bias indicators because there are going to be people who they're just going to lie, and you got to kind of lead them into it. Like, look, this is a thought experiment. Just be as honest as.
Oh,
as
okay.
you
well,
can
that's
be.
where you come. That I don't know.
Yeah.
About. That's
Right.
where you come in. That's
Yeah.
and then the Carl, you can Karl Popper into it, using the Karl Popper principle,
Karl
blah, blah,
Popper.
blah, blah, blah. That's where all the punch of Nazi crap comes from. It's Karl Popper.
Yeah.
The whole thing of your tolerance is the most important thing, et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes tolerance, you have to be intolerant of the tolerance or whatever, because his principle that he's pushing, and if you look, it's in cartoons, it's in comics, everything else. It's all Karl Popper, and it's the punch and Nazi scenario. We can't be so tolerant to let these intolerant people be in there. Got to shut them down. Blah blah blah.
Should Trump, if convicted, be allowed to be president from prison?
Yeah, or who is it? Harris, or I'm not. Maybe it wasn't Harris or Harvard. It was somebody already asked whether or not he should be able to pardon himself.
Oh, that was on the news here last night on local Fox.
Yeah,
saying that when they Smith leaked additional charges against him from the grand jury about the documents, they said, will he pardon himself if he wins the election and is convicted? I mean, that's a thought. That's another type of thought question that is provocative, but local news and news people do it all the time.
Yeah, I think that there are some people right now who think that he, if you believe some of the other polling, they think he won't be convicted. This to me that's going to take some time. I think people will start to move on that question. I do, because look, this is a man who just said, "I'm ready, Judge. I'm ready to move forward. Let's front load this trial." And you can't be ready to move on a trial if you have new charges coming down 2 weeks later. Like this
that's why he brought the charges at 2 weeks later, and he's going to do it again and again and again
and again and again. Right.
I mean, Smith is an animal. He's an animal.
Yeah.
This is something that is it going to be in Miami? The document case is in Miami, or
the document case is going to be in Miami. Trump's biggest threat, my opinion, is any kind of January 6th related charges that come down in the District of Columbia, because I've done it. Barnes and I were just doing it as a thought exercise. It wasn't about conducting voir dire like we normally do, to research for jury selection. It was just what if, we kind of were thinking they're regular defendants now, but we all kind of smell that. We all see the handwriting on the wall. We know what time it is. And a year or two down the road, they may use this precedent against Trump. So we were thinking about that. And I wasn't surprised.
Well, I think the indictment can come on Monday, Rich. I think this Monday is going to be the indictment, from what I gather.
Yeah, that's what they said. It's going to come. What's today? Friday. It was supposed to come maybe yesterday or maybe as early as Tuesday, and it didn't. So we'll see. But I think that it's coming. I have always told people, I'm just from a numbers perspective, Mark. I polled 2016. I polled 2020. This guy has never had the support that I'm seeing right now. And it's from all walks of life that, Democrats never conceive of losing any of these people to a Republican. They have no damn choice, is my point. He's gonna beat them like a drum if they allow him to just ride freely to the ballot box in a normal election. It's going to be a bloodbath. So they have no choice. But people say it all the time. Don't they care about destroying the country? My answer to them is no, they don't. No. They know what I know.
That's another one for your polling. I mean, if you can't have your utopian style democracy, are you willing to destroy the country, or burn it down, whatever you want to word it as such? I mean, I think there is a winner take all, or a black and white thinking, or a type of thinking that they have where, and I've said this to Eric on the show, I believe a lot of these baby boomers who are now for the first time atheistically, whether they're celebrities or musicians or filmmakers, they're finally reaching the end of their life, and the fans aren't going to be there in the afterlife. They don't believe in an afterlife. They don't have a God. And all of a sudden, they want to take the ball and go home. They do not want this party to continue when they're gone. And I know that's an abstract concept to people who believe in God, like I think the three of us or two and a half of us do. Yeah. And the idea that the party's over for people like Neil Young, and I think a lot of them want to take the party down. And I mean, I don't mean the Democratic Party. I mean the after party. Yeah, that they've been involved in. If that makes any sense.
It's a narcissistic.
Yeah,
it's a
narcissism, right?
Yeah. And so I'm willing to see that they have a possibility of going to war with NATO and Ukraine and going to a nuclear level thing. I think a lot of this tonality that we're seeing these days is coming from this baby boomer about to depart celebrity generation, where you're just going like, how could Crosby, Stills, and Nash be in support of the Ukraine war? This doesn't make any sense. You know, and I'm saying Crosby, Stills, and Nash as a generic baby.
What is the world without them in it?
There's
no point in keeping the world without the beauty and the charm and the brilliance of them.
I think you're totally right.
If it burns down,
when Joni Mitchell and Neil Young go after Joe Rogan, you just go like, wait a minute, what is this to them? I mean, you know, why are they pro-war? Why is the Democratic Party, you know, being led by these 99-year-old fossils all of a sudden willing to go to DEFCON 90 and bring us to the brink of nuclear war? And I think they feel that if they can't have their way, fuck everybody. We're going to take this whole thing with us.
I agree. I think you're right. I think you got their mentality down. I really do, because there's no way to reconcile some of these people, the things they have done their whole lives, you know, and then the positions they're taking at the twilight of their life. It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. But
intellectually,
we don't have you for that long. I wanted to jump around a couple of subjects here.
I wanted to ask one thing real quickly before we get in. It probably won't take that long. I sent you both the thing about the Twitter space that was going on. I don't know if it's over or not, but Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy on a Twitter space, and I can't help but go, is this the final nail in the DeSantis coffin? Because it appears optically to me that that's Elon. Remember, DeSantis announced with the big Twitter space. Now you've got the billionaire. He's got Vivek, who's been raising up, and now he's in a Twitter space.
He had his turn in the Twitter space. What's more important, Eric, is I think he laid off 1/3 of his staff.
Oh yeah, I know all that.
And I think that's the real telltale sign that he's done. He got his book deal from Rupert Murdoch, multi-million-dollar book deal, and now his family's set for life. He's done. This campaign is done. Stick a fork in him, right, Rich?
Listen, Peter Fye, he's out. Elon Musk, he's out. The Murdochs are out. Ken Griffin didn't even show up the last week to his in the not the Hudson Valley, the Hamptons, in the Southamptons. 2 of the events were canceled because there wasn't enough interest, and they went from 6,600 a plate to 3,300, and they still couldn't fill either one of these venues in the Hamptons, so they canceled them.
It's a plate, though.
It's over. It's over. This is over.
Let me ask you this, because we got to move quickly into the lightning round. RFK Jr., the longer he's in the race, does it help or hurt Donald Trump by taking money out of the populist coffers into his pocket, close to $1 million every day or two, Rich?
I think it helps him anyway in the long run, because what we're cultivating here is a group of soon-to-be disenfranchised, pissed off at the Democratic Party voters. When we asked Robert Kennedy's vote, we've been asking this for months and months now.
Okay,
if your choice is not the nominee, what will you do in the general election? You could obviously not vote. You could vote third party. Or you could vote for the other party, or will you eventually vote for that party's nominee? You know, so if it's not RFK, how many of them will actually just vote for Biden? Guys, this is going to really, I need to twist your heads around. Roughly, it doesn't matter whether we're in Iowa, Florida, nationally, it doesn't matter. Roughly 35 to 40% of RFK's voters say that if it's not RFK, they'll vote for Donald Trump, period. So, and not, by the way, not another Republican. Because if it's not Donald Trump,
my question is,
Or they'll vote
the
third
amount
party.
of money that he's raising is not coming out of Biden's war chest. It's coming out of a potential Donald Trump war chest. If you donate $1,500 today to RFK and you don't have $1,500 later on down the road for Donald Trump, is the fundraising campaign of RFK going to hurt Donald Trump in the long run?
The reason why I say no is because I think the people that he's bringing along now that could potentially become Trump supporters weren't naturally going to make the leap right from where the position they were before RFK right to Donald Trump. Yeah. So I think,
hold on. How do you know that they were not already Donald Trump supporters?
there are some. We actually did look at the filings. There are people who did give to Trump before and are now giving to RFK. But actually, what we went and what we saw with the decision desk is actually that those people, the vast majority of those people, are still giving to Trump. So they're like just giving to both of these people. There's the amount of like people who bailed on Trump for RFK is really kind of small. RFK is getting a lot of money from people who aren't Republican, but they're either orphan Democrats, like they feel like orphaned by the party. Yeah. Or they're very, moderate independents. And that's been a challenge for him in the polling because a lot of these states are closed. Independents can't vote in them, and so until he breaks into the Democratic coalition, that's going to be his challenge. But most of those people who are supporting him are independents who really can't stand either party.
Which gets me to this story on the Hill this morning about this progressive mailing list to try to keep RFK Jr. off the ballot. I don't know if you heard about that. The text messaging that's going around, tens of thousands of Democrats are getting these messages to keep him off the ballot. Is it possible to keep him off the ballot, or is it a state-by-state situation, Rich, or what's the deal there?
Yeah, when it comes to, who gets on a ballot and who doesn't, that most definitely has to be done, mostly anyway, at the state level.
State Democratic Party.
Yeah. Right. And honestly, it's going to be tough. The best thing and their best option to hurt RFK is to do what they're already doing, which is move around the schedule. So,
okay, let me ask you that. Has the schedule flipped? Is South Carolina ahead of New Hampshire now?
It is, and Iowa.
Well, then we have a situation here where they've made some muscular political moves to keep Joe Biden entrenched, right?
Iowa Democrats are pissed. We just polled them, and they're mad. And even I'm talking about Democrats that weren't decided on Biden or RFK. They just, what mattered to them is their status, their long-held status of being first in the nation, because there is a reason and a thought process behind this. And I think a lot of people discount it or don't know.
Retail politics.
Yeah, I mean, you don't always want, especially if you're progressive, you're supposed to care about this. You don't always want the mega donor candidate to be the one who gets all of the steam in the beginning, all of the money, because if you go into other states like South Carolina and Florida and, first, it's more expensive. The media market's more expensive. With Iowa and New Hampshire, they're small states. You can afford media time, even if you're not a big donor candidate. And frankly, you could just get in your truck and drive around the damn state and shake hands.
He's going to come out of the gate, unlike LBJ in 1968 in New Hampshire versus Eugene McCarthy, where Eugene McCarthy almost single-handedly toppled the incumbent president. Yeah. Biden is assured a victory with elbow room in South Carolina as the first primary, to sum it up.
Clyburn,
absolutely.
Clyburn owns South Carolina.
Because of Clyburn and because of South Carolina's African-American Democratic base, he is assured to start the primary season with a victory.
With a win.
Go Cornell West. Go Cornell West.
Go Cornell West.
Honestly, this is what I think they're miscalculating here. He should have just taken the competition in the early states first, because then he could have pivoted to South Carolina and run it up when he gets to the South.
That's a good point.
He should have just done that, because I'm telling you.
You could have said that about LBJ too in 1968.
Yeah.
But I mean, McCarthy was coming from you had an unpopular war, and I believe as time goes on, this war is going to become as unpopular as the Vietnam War, because there seems to be no way to extricate themselves before the election. So those numbers are not going to go up. They're only going to go in one direction for Ukraine, and that's down.
Of course, yeah,
right, because of the bloodbath. Okay, so once you have that, and you have peace candidates coming at him from the left, a la Cornell West and RFK Jr., it's going to make a dent in his numbers, Rich, right or no?
He's the lowest polling incumbent we've ever seen. If you do a crowded field with other potential candidates, he doesn't even get out of the 30s in our polling. And then when we pit him up against Marianne Williamson and RFK, RFK is usually around 20%. He's at 55 to 60, So, I mean, he's an incumbent. And people will always say, well, what about Trump? He's only at 55, 60. Trump is not a sitting incumbent right now. When he was, there were people running against him and he was getting 80, 90%. This is a weak incumbent. So I think that's why they felt they needed to move around that schedule because
I agree.
There could have been a loss.
68 again. Let me go back to 68 again, because the comparisons to LBJ and Biden are breathtaking.
They are.
The criminality, the entrenchment in the Democratic Party, the having multiple hats worn by both candidates, both politicians, both kind of from the South and Delaware, if you perceive Delaware to be a Southern state. And
the exit polls do.
Yeah. Right. Okay. That's what I'm kind of getting at. And then you have a war that's getting unpopular with the two candidates. You have an incumbent president who may have stolen the election and another one who may have killed his predecessor to get into office. So you've got that bizarre baggage. Then you've got a situation.
Who may have stolen it for him too, though, by the way.
Right. Now you have a situation where in March of 1968, when LBJ announces he will not seek nor will I accept the nomination of my party for a second term as president of the United States, then you have RFK, who begins to surge in the polls, who wins California, gets assassinated. And where I'm going with this is that the man in the White House at that time, LBJ, orders, without a congressional act, he orders that Secret Service protect presidential candidates from here on out. There will later be a law passed later that year in 68, insisting that this occurs. Apparently in 2017, I've now learned that law has been revoked, that you don't automatically get.
It was.
Do you know about this?
I do think it was.
It now goes to the Department of Homeland Security, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, the Senate Minority Leader, and the House Minority Leader, and a fifth person who is a DH who comes in late in the game to pinch hit, apparently, another undisclosed person. And that's why RFK Jr., despite his father being assassinated before there was a law that presidential candidates had to have Secret Service protection, has been refused by Joe Biden after submitting a 68-page document, waiting months now. And finally, the results came from the White House. We are not going to protect you, sir, as you go around the country as a presidential candidate, Rich.
Yeah, and I
against me.
There's some arguments that he's not quite there yet. He's just a candidate, but I think the counterpoint to that
Bernie Sanders,
is that he's
2016.
Not. Yeah, what's that, Eric?
Bernie Sanders, 2016.
Yeah, there's another. Yeah, you're right. And then also,
the law was changed in 2017, by the way.
The counterpoint is that he's a candidate whose father and uncle have been killed. And, so this is an extenuating circumstance, even if you want to, even if you want to play the game.
I was not aware that there were extenuating circumstances. I guess I dropped the ball on this. I didn't know in 2017 that it wasn't automatic anymore.
Yeah.
It involves polling. It involves ideas. It involves opinions, who your opponent is. I mean, for the love of God, put some Secret Service on this guy. Are you kidding me?
Especially with what they've been saying about him. They make him a vaccine. They try to tie all these crazy vaccine conspiracy theories.
The question is, do they want him to be removed physically from the race?
Not yet, but I think they would absolutely get to that if it needed to get to that, Mark. So people have been saying to me recently, and I'm like stunned at the naivety of people. They're like, well, what are you saying? Like they would kill Donald Trump? And I'm like, do you understand I'm like, do you understand what human beings, what they kill over? Stupid, dumb things. Right. Do you think they would not kill for the most powerful office in the world?
The American people has never, ever been explained to me in a proper way, because the Europeans get it. They just were completely naive and childlike.
We used to be.
The second in command, the assassination of a leader, of a world leader, going back to Roman times, the most likely and found to be the instigator of that is always the guy who's going to succeed.
He's going to succeed them.
Right. And here it's like, what? This is impossible. In our system, no.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. It's naive. And we weren't always like this. Something happened to us where we forgot that government really is adversarial. There's an inverse relationship between liberty and tyranny. And oh, by the way, the government is not the good guy. Like, wait, something happened to us. Now we view it, or not all of us, but many of us view this government as like some kind of a referee, against the unfair injustices of society. This bureaucrat's going to help, make right what's wrong about all of these private citizens fighting after their own slice of pie. That's stupid. It has never been like that. I don't know where that idea came from.
On the upside, I see people on the conservative side finally looking at the FBI and the CIA like I did when I was growing up. And you know what I mean? Like the Democrats have now switched and embraced these organizations. Because but my opinion has never changed one iota about the FBI and the CIA.
You're being consistent, Mark, but you're right. I think you just said it, Eric. I mean, Mark, your goal is not power. Like, your end game is not the obtaining and conserving of power for your ideas and your party. Yeah, you want to win, of course, but your end game is the truth or the best outcome. That's not the case with these people. That's why they flip-flop every day, and there's no consistency. It's all hypocritical, because whatever matters to the to the cause that day, some things go on the block and you have to get rid of them.
I mean, even take the Kennedy assassination. The people on the right used to laugh at me years ago. They ain't laughing no more. Yeah. I mean, even Ben Shapiro, even sometimes the president of the United States must have to stand naked. I mean, people on the right have been exposed to stuff that I grew up with on the left that we took for granted. And now I'm happily seeing the other side begin to embrace these ideas, where we and I used to be mocked by this years and years ago for being conspiracy theorists. I'm not being mocked anymore. I'll tell you that much.
Again, it's power. It goes from the protesters to the power. So they go from protesting against the authority. Then when they become the authority, they act like the authority.
I mean, how the hell did Rage Against the Machine become the machine? Like, what the hell happened here? I mean, and Eric, just to talk about what you were saying before with Elon and Vivek, because I did see that message you had sent. To me, the last couple of weeks of the DeSantis campaign and their team, like, on social media, basically begging Elon to come back and help them, because it was very obvious, and I'm not sure everybody knows this. The campaign's got bots galore. It was very obvious in the beginning that Elon was propping him up. And what they're essentially doing now, openly begging him to help them again, is a crime. It's a crime. It's called an in-kind campaign contribution. So you have people, and I'm not even going to say their names because I don't want to give them any airtime or elevate their stooge-like level anywhere. But what they're asking, they're so stupid, and they're so not. They're just fake Twitter influencers. They act like they're veteran campaign strategists or something. What they don't even understand they're doing when they go to Twitter and say that out loud is that they are requesting that Elon use his company to the benefit of a presidential campaign. That is a crime.
Well, that's what Zuckerberg did with Facebook, and there's no criminal charges for him.
That is a problem, Mark. I mean, what he did, that's a problem. You're not supposed to be able to do that.
There's two subjects I want to touch on with you before you have to go. One is the Hunter Biden case. What is your read on the female Trump judge that tore up this agreement the other day? Huge story. A lot of people have emailed me about it. What's your take on what happened there? Is he toast? Is he going to be incarcerated? What's the deal here?
I'm with my guest from earlier today, Will Scharf. He was a former federal prosecutor. He's now running for Missouri Attorney General. And he said, you know what? You got to give her credit for now, because she did her job. They tried to hoodwink her. Yeah. Let's see, because she told them to go back to the drawing board. They're going to try, he says, and I do too, that they're going to try to basically put a very similar kind of arrangement in front of her again, and
Right.
let's see what she does then. And
Right.
then we'll know, because Mike Davis was there when she got on the bench, and he was just like, she's being pushed as like this right-wing judge that Trump appointed, but that's not really, that's not really the case. Yeah, it was hard to get, people through that were actually really good people. So in most accounts, you kind of just take suggestions from people in order to get somebody you want later down the road on a different position. That's what happened with her. Yeah, that's what happened with her. She was kind of like, all right, you Democrats want her. I won't object. I'll appoint her, we'll get her there now. But yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But also too, what I worry about is that this thing they threw in, Mark, the ongoing investigation. What that means is now we're going to use this as an excuse.
Wait a minute.
Jordan
he has to get a job and drug test. How does he get past those two things? What kind of job does he go to Walgreens and say, I'll bag groceries?
Mark, I know somebody who got 5 years for the exact same gun.
We all know those, Rich.
We all know. He did almost every.
I did that stuff. I did it.
Mark, he did almost every year of that 5 years. This guy almost every year
at that time.
This is some bull, and I'll tell you, I worry about that ongoing event. Anytime we hear that, then that should be at this point a cue for us all. They're going to try to obstruct Congress. It's an ongoing investigation. It's a great way to like hide the ball and keep the Congress from digging too much, because unless something physically happens to Joe Biden, they're going to have to still try to protect him. I know a lot of people think Gavin Newsom is going to replace him. And I'm not saying you can't.
You brought it up.
Yeah.
How did you get from here to the other side physically without completely collapsing?
Yeah.
I mean, and what is the role? What is the role, in your humble political opinion, of this man in waiting, Gavin Newsom, who's running full bore with a huge war chest out of California? Now the state's on autopilot, and he's going around the country running in some parallel presidential campaign where he's not criticizing Biden, which, by the way, RFK Jr. for the first time this week went after Biden. And we had raised that questions multiple times.
Censorship, Facebook, all of that. He finally
when is he going to take off the gloves? Newsom is not taking off the gloves and has been embraced by Joe Biden. What is the role? What is the campaign of Gavin Newsom?
The Democratic Governors Association had met in DC. This has got to be almost 6 months ago now. They met in DC and they agreed, or at least they agreed, that, we're going to get behind Biden and we're going to actively try to push people, away from challenging him. And so I think Newsom is dealing with that reality, but running, for 2028, I think he hopes to hell that Joe Biden loses this election. If
you're saying he's a pulling guard in front of a running back going downfield, blocking for Joe Biden. Okay.
And if the opportunity arises,
go on,
he'll take the lateral toss and run himself. You know what I mean?
So you're saying there could be a lateral that goes not forward, but a lateral behind the line of scrimmage.
A side
lateral where he gets the ball and runs. And despite Harris belly aching in her Indian Jamaican community,
I think they hate each other anyway. I think Harris and Newsom were not tight. I don't think they like each other.
Not tight. Somebody's got to be on the top of that ticket and on a ballot somewhere. How does Newsom get on a ballot if, God forbid, something happens here? What is the scenario that you could see in your wild imagination, Rich?
Well, that's why they love their super delegates. I mean, they can play a lot of funny things with the rules.
Touche, my friend. Touche, super delegates.
And they love their super delegates for this reason. And by the way, Team DeSantis people on Team DeSantis have wanted super delegates for years. Ken Cuccinelli absolutely, because they don't like the idea of people picking preredicts either. But I will say
this:
Kamala's she'll be pushed aside, guys. She'll be pushed aside because her poll numbers are terrible. She's so unlikable.
I agree. Can you imagine, in your wildest imagination, RFK Jr. speaking at the Democratic Convention in Chicago in 2024?
No way.
No.
Thank you.
Democrats have lost their minds. And the stuff that he's been talking about with censorship, they're like, whoa. We love to persecute our political opposition
Right.
today.
Even
Okay,
you,
Robert,
we'll
I don't know where
persecute
you're
you.
coming from here.
Right.
And on vaccines, whoa. Why didn't you come in here with a mask on? Now you're going to come at us with vaccine mandates? You know, they've lost their minds, guys. He's committed sins against the
Okay, so
Democratic
what
Party.
is his, in a fantasy world, what is, and I'm going to ask him this one, and if we get him on the show, what
keep it
is
by
his
myself.
path, what is his path to victory?
Honestly, and I'm just being a realist here,
Right,
I just don't see one. I don't.
Either do I. Either do I.
yeah.
Then why
I
is he
don't.
doing this? Why is he doing this?
I think he's trying to open up a conversation. You know, and I think it's one not only we, but the Democratic Party desperately needs to have with itself. He is a Kennedy. And by the way, his family, let me just take this opportunity to say this like formally. You're all a bunch of pieces of shit. I've never seen the disgusting public display of disloyalty. And, you know, what's the matter? You're afraid you're going to lose your invitation at the Friday tea and crumpets? Are you out of your, you know, it's like, what, if you're an average American, what would the ruling class not do to you if they're willing to sell their own down the,
in their defense, and I'm not defending them, there are hundreds and hundreds, and I don't mean this in an exaggeration, of Kennedys in the family. You're hearing from 5 Kennedys, Rich.
That's true, but they are. He
has said this himself. There's hundreds of people in his family.
Yeah, but they haven't been forthcoming with support or even defense, Mark.
Okay.
You know, I mean,
that's a good point. That's a good point.
It's disgraceful. I honestly, it's just to me, it's family comes, should come. You know, I mean, that was
the same family members, to be fair, came at me and him when we were trying to get Sirhan paroled. They were the same ones who came out of the woodwork, did not come to the parole hearing like I and RFK Jr. did, and tried to stop Sirhan's parole by going to Newsom. So it wasn't about vaccines. It wasn't about running against Biden. It's everything. It's everything. It doesn't matter what it is. As Kerry Kennedy and the other sister said, Sirhan's going to take an Uber from Pasadena to Malibu and kill us. You know, these people are batshit crazy. They're batshit crazy.
Mark,
not him.
One fake New York Times allegation is all it took. It wasn't even real. What he said, it wasn't even an honest, forget about interpretation of what he said. It was not what he said. And that's all it took was one headline from the gray lady, which gives them all their cue to walk like the robots they are in line and start. You know, it's disgusting. It's just, you know.
I made this analogy last week. Maybe maybe you can comment on this. I looked at Trump versus Biden as Ali Frazier, right? Yeah. And with all these other people as midget wrestlers running around the ring, preventing us from starting the fight, from starting the thrill in Manila. Isn't it to Trump's betterment or strength to clear this field as fast as humanly possible so he can go mano a mano with this senile old fuck and stop having these distractions, whether it's RFK or the Indian guy or DeSantis or whoever these midget wrestlers are in the ring. So Ali Frazier 2, if you get that's why I started with the boxing references today, can begin, Rich.
Yeah, and there's a number of reasons why that's the case. And one of them is legal. One of them is legal. The incumbent has an advantage where he doesn't have to wait until they kind of like lock up the nomination and before they can start to use money to literally attack and define their political opponents. When you're a challenger, when you have all these Keebler elves who have no chance of being president, you know, doing this and holding up the nomination and the clinching of the nomination, you're tying Trump's hands.
That's right. That's what I'm getting at.
Absolutely. And then, of course, they want to make him, you know, they want to keep him in court for as long as they can.
That's the other side doing it. But I'm saying on both sides, there seems to be a desire to muddy this water for as long as humanly possible, Rich.
Yeah.
Right?
You know, a donor told me and he's a donor who he's gone. He's done with DeSantis. He was a Wall Street donor. He's him and 2 other guys that I was speaking with last week. He told me one of them is going back to Trump. The other one's like trying to get Tim Scott or if you can't get Glenn Youngkin, maybe you'll go with Tim Scott. This one is leaning towards going back to Trump because he's just like, no one's going to win. Trump is going to win.
Right,
and his bottom line is he's thinking, you know, that at this point, DeSantis is really, in his mind, and I kind of get what he's saying, DeSantis is enabling the lawfare. Because if DeSantis bowed out, they would lose their chosen deep state candidate or their like stand-in stooge. And they would have really, it would be much harder for them to continue to come at Trump with these indictments if their guy stood out of the way. So what he was saying is his mere presence in the race is enabling this.
Yes.
And if he just got out and said, you know what, we all got to get behind Trump and beat this lawfare, that they would have to take a second and say, uh-oh, now
That's
we
right.
have a problem.
That's
You
right.
know, so, yeah,
What I'm
and
saying is the sooner we get to that day, the better it is for everyone,
for
because
the country.
for the
Yeah.
country. No, for
Yeah.
the country, because at
Absolutely.
the end of the day, it's going to be these two guys. You know, short of
I'm
death
like-
on either part, short of death on either one of them,
Yeah.
the inevitability of this, I've never seen clearer in a second round incumbent versus
So
the
awesome.
challenger race, right, Rich?
I'm so pissed at my profession that they have not done a better job or
Thank
any
you.
job
Thank
at
you.
explaining to people how dominant
Yes.
Trump's position is
Yes.
historically
Thank
and
you.
what being above 50% means. It
know.
means you can't consolidate the rest of the field and still win.
Thank
You
you.
have to change their minds, and that's almost impossible in this day and age. It's over.
It's over.
And with Ron
Plus,
DeSantis,
we
he
know it's
can't raise
over.
money.
I'm sorry, go on.
I was just going to say people have to understand there's no low dollar contributions coming into Ron DeSantis. There never has been. The mega donors are done with him, and he couldn't even get 2 events in the Southamptons for $3,300 a plate last weekend. You cannot replenish your coffers like that. Mark, he's dry. It's going to be dry. He
Oh
didn't
no,
cut
I
a
agree.
third of
I
the staff.
agree with you. I'm just saying the sooner this field is clear, the better it is for the country, Biden
Yeah.
or Trump supporters.
Get it
Either one.
on.
Because I don't want to have this campaign start in
Yeah.
October of 2024, which is what they want.
As
They
always.
want this guy to be tied up in court with multiple opponents to muddy the water, to diminish the fundraising, and then after he untangles himself in October 19th, good luck of
It was just-
2024.
It was just
Okay.
in Rolling Stone, actually. That was just in
okay.
Rolling Stone. They said they were like, and I have been trying to tell people this with other DeSantis supporters, saying, "Oh, he really wants to run against Trump." No, he doesn't.
No, he
And
doesn't.
then he wants to tie Trump up for as long as possible.
Absolutely,
He
absolutely.
would much rather run against DeSantis. Much rather run against him.
Absolutely.
And
All right,
it's-
let me switch over. We don't have much time.
Came
I
out
want
with
to
a great article.
UFOs.
switch over to UFOs.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's
I
do
want to
it.
switch over because they had the hearings this week, Rich. And
I tweeted about it. You guys
both
see it?
our audiences know
Tag you
both
guys.
Rich Baris and myself have had
Yep.
close encounters of the third kind.
Yeah, amen.
You can briefly sum up yours or sum up mine, and then we'll just go on to what happened this week. Go ahead, Rich.
You know, with what
Because
happened
not
to me.
everybody knows that we've, what the details were of our encounters.
I
so.
tweeted it. I tagged you guys too. I tweeted it with the behavior panel, and I said that I believe that this issue deserves more than what it's getting right now, and I hate that they're using it to try to distract. Yeah, I think they're using it for distraction value when it's an incredibly important issue that needs to be put above so many other issues. What happened to me? Very simple. We saw what is, and no, it was not a stealth bomber. We saw what was a city-sized triangular craft of unknown origin. It was way too big to be human. I don't believe it was human. And the way that it departed,
Human designed.
yeah, there's no. I mean, Mark, I'll just tell you, there's no chance in my mind that was designed by humans. And then also, we saw it depart. And what is interesting is, I mean, what I saw it do, it's like a Bob Lazar kind of account on how these technologies work. This did not go from point A to point B. This thing was at point A and made point B come to it more. That's the way it looked.
Wow.
It's very difficult to explain, with human perception because we don't move like this. But it was massive, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful, but it was not human.
Wow.
It wasn't. I don't believe it was.
Now, mine, like I've discussed with you before, mine was on the ground, and I was with my girlfriend and another girl about 9 o'clock at night in Jewett, New York, upstate in the summer. We saw this thing in a field. We went down to it. It wasn't flying. It was on the ground. We were literally 50 to 75 feet away for a long period of time, just watching these pulsating lights on this circular craft on the ground until a black Plymouth showed up with 3 men in suits and ties in the middle of nowhere. And we were kind of frozen there and couldn't move for about 15 to 20 minutes, which I later learned were some men in black who had showed up.
Men in black.
According to John Keel, my old friend who wrote the Mothman Prophecies. But that being said, the hearings this week were probably the most dramatic hearings anybody's ever heard on Capitol Hill. Right, Rich?
They were for them, and you could hear it in some of the reactions that the lawmakers had. I heard one go on Steve Bannon, or two went on Bannon in the war room afterwards. I know Steve has a great interest in this topic. And it seemed like, to like people like you and I, Mark, who have had experiences, we start to take a dive into this world and ufology and see what other people have known and what they've studied. It's almost like nothing I heard in that hearing was new to me, but you could see it was the first time they've ever heard about interdimensional beings, the first time they've ever heard about the possibility of recovering biologics. And by the way, it came
biologics, yeah.
But that word, what he said, what Grosh actually said.
Well, he said a couple of phrases.
The words he uses are the right word.
Crash retrieval, Rich.
They are the right
reverse engineering.
Yeah.
This is Grush, who, just so people at home, former Air Force intelligence operative who's been
using the military terms for these things.
Using military terms, and he's been privy to this stuff for over 30 years or 20 years.
Spooky dude, Mark.
He doesn't say
dude.
And the person pursuing this was Representative Burchett out of Tennessee, a Republican, right?
Yeah, very curious guy.
Very curious guy who also asked Grush if he had heard that people had been harmed in their attempts to get to the bottom of this, and Grush immediately responded yes. Well, that was fascinating.
There's one off the bat that we all should really know about. If you listen to the accounts of Bob Lazar and others, Bob Lazar replaced a lab partner that was previously killed, according to him, because they had tried to reverse engineer this. Like he always says, it's like bringing a nuclear power source back into the Victorian era, where a bunch of monkeys trying to figure out how a combustion engine works, right? And apparently they had tried to get into this gravity, anti-gravitational device, and something went wrong, and that person was hurt. But there has also been accounts of these things just playing games with our pilots. There was one pilot in Iran.
Well, let's name the two pilots who testified: David Fravor and Ryan Graves.
And Fravor is a serious guy. Commander Fravor
is a serious guy. So is Graves, and he's the two top Navy pilots who both had multiple encounters with these crafts and have filed and issued detailed reports to the Navy, who, as I recall from the Tucker coverage, decided to let these guys go public, according to them, because they realized that they had put nearly $1 million or more in training of each individual Navy pilot. And it was a complete waste to jettison them any longer for UFO revelations, if that makes any sense.
There's something else too. It does. And something else that, aside from him using the term biologics and biological entities, because if you look at some of the stuff ufologists have gathered over the years, they don't refer to actual bodies or beings as extraterrestrial. They don't use that. They call them biological entities, right? Alien abductions. And so when I heard him use that term, it was very similar to when I heard Elizondo say UAPs, because
Tell them what UAPs are.
Unidentified aerial phenomena. They do not use the terms that the public.
They've changed the terminology, right?
They do. And by the way, I will say this: when it comes to Matt Gaetz and what he had said about Eglin Air Force, his experience in Eglin Air Force Base. You may know this, Mark, because of your Hollywood contacts, but there has long been this rumor that Nixon the Nixon administration had arranged for Steven Spielberg and others to see a certain footage a roll of old school footage, and that is where he got many of the ideas for Close Encounters.
Wow.
And guess what, folks? It wasn't a base in Nevada. It was
Right.
Eglin Air Base in Florida. So what Gates had brought up, it was another kind of like, oh, moment, because Nixon also confided in Gleason, and they were very good friends, you know, to the moon, Alice. He confided in him quite a bit. And one of the stories that Gleason had told his family, he had come home one day after being with Nixon, and his wife said he was just like white as a ghost. And he said he took me to Eglin and then wouldn't talk for like 7 days. He was like, his world had stopped. You know, again, these are passed down stories, but when they get interwoven like that with like congressional testimony, and it makes you, it kind of sends an alarm bell off in your head. And by the way, how some of the stuff that really scared some of these lawmakers was him saying that not only does the U.S. know about this, the government know about this, but they have had some form of contact for some time. Yeah. And that was what that incident in Eglin was all about. And apparently Nixon wanted
the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program.
Yes,
Pentagon. Yep. That's the name of the group in the Pentagon, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And that's, relatively
that's
new.
An acronym, AATIP.
Yeah, ATIP.
ATIP. Oh, it is. Yep. Okay, ATIP.
Yep. And that's a relatively new program.
That's brand new. Yeah, I've never heard that before. Yeah.
I mean, this new whistleblower, Roche, if I'm saying his name right, what he has been saying is that this has been going on way before that. And, that this is it's difficult to do their job if they don't have access to all of this stuff. And the fact the Inspector General Moore took some of the stuff so seriously. Mm-hmm. And by the way, before he disappeared again, Elizondo, last time he went on Tucker
Carlson, where did he go? Where did he disappear to?
He made the same claims that we're hearing now from this whistleblower. And he told Tucker, I'm going to get a piece of this and we're going to have it independently analyzed. And then poof, that was it. He disappeared off the face of the earth. And by the way, we've tried to figure out what the hell is the status of this. Where did Christopher Mellon go? Where did he go? I know they're around, but they made these big claims and then took a step back. And it
could be an intelligence op, and when I'm not naive enough to think that they wouldn't do this, especially if you're talking about like what Wernher von Braun was suggesting, that they may fake alien invasions to justify insane defense budgets once they've reached the ceiling of how far they can go on the earth with defense budgets. They may go to an intergalactic version to justify defense budgets. So you would have to put this groundwork together of seeding the earth with these alien stories, according to Wernher von Braun, who was a real brilliant realpolitik Nazi, not a fantasist by any stretch of imagination, although he teamed up with a fantasist named Walt Disney every Sunday night when I was a kid.
That's true.
Maybe there was fantasy in Wernher von Braun, but he said that we would eventually reach this point where we would need to create an enemy outside the earth to justify defense budgets. So I'm just
and the best psyops are always interwoven with the truth. They are, there's always some element of truth to them, and that's what makes them believable to some people. I will just say, it doesn't make me, though, even if this whole thing is because the last time what happened, there was a Chinese spy balloon, and then they just started talking about shooting down UFOs. It does seem like they're using this issue to distract. And but to me, that's
could be both. It could be both.
It could be both. But Mark, you've had an experience, and so have I. And when you do, it changes something about your worldview changes.
Absolutely.
And it frankly pisses me off that we only seem to have these little, spats of conversation about it when it serves somebody's interest. And it's like, for me, what I saw, everyone better want to figure out who the hell created that craft.
Oh, yeah.
Who manufactured this craft?
Yep.
What the hell are you going to do? I mean, honestly,
mine was in 1977, Rich. So,
it's a long time. Yeah.
A long time ago. But I mean, we were stone cold sober, and we were, coming from the movie theater, and we just, encountered this for a long period of time. And, we were there looking at it, and it was what it was. You know, and I wasn't a believer before that happened. I wasn't a UFO believer, and I never had sightings or any of this stuff, and I had no interest in the field. And that happened to me. So, and it's happened to a lot of people, including you.
Yeah, when you see it, it's like you just said, it was what it was. So
Yeah.
anytime you try to convey it to somebody, they're like, Rich, couldn't that have been a B-52, B2 stuff? Listen, when you see it for real, that close for that long,
Yeah.
it isn't, it's not, there's no other explanation. You know, I mean, you'll feel the presence of something that's just beyond or
Look,
otherworldly.
there was
I don't know how to
mockery.
explain it.
There was mockery and laughter at people who pursued the JFK conspiracy of the assassination for years. They're not laughing anymore.
Yeah.
And I equate that also to UFOlogy because they're not laughing anymore about this subject. So I think,
Mark, this subject's going to force itself one way or the other. And again, I don't think the government is even, I don't think they even have the power to control it, because Eric had said when I was telling him this story, you know, it's like an ant. When you walk past an ant, do you really give an ant that kind of attention? You know, because that must be how we seem to them. Eventually, if they decide they want to tell us they're here, the government's not going to have a damn say over it. They're just going to do it, because what I saw, they don't have any way to stop it.
No, we're like
there's
lost tribes on the Amazon. We're like
what's that, Eric?
To me, we're like lost tribes in the Amazon.
Oh,
We're always watching them, keeping an eye. Look, they're not ready to see us yet. And then when there's minor encounters, they're very aggressive.
Yeah.
So, I think about that.
They can go below the ocean and maneuver, and a submarine can see them after a fighter jet is astounding.
Right.
That's an astounding factoid.
And the ability to move through different environments like that is one of they have that term UAP. That's one of the requirements to be classified as a UAP. You have to be able to have whatever it's called. There's some term they use, but air, sea, space, whatever.
That's right.
Yeah. Trans something. Yeah, there's an acronym for it. But I mean, Eric just put that exactly right. It's like we're the lost tribe of the Amazon. Actually makes me a little sad. Why I think we need to pay more serious and more adult attention to this, because you just feel so small when you see something like that, and you start to feel like, what's wrong with us that they don't include us in this community? Like what is it about us? And then you can't help. Then that inevitably leads to like real introspection on yourself and the human race, and you don't like what you see. Because
according to the experts, they seem highly concerned about our use of two things: nuclear power and nuclear power. You know that, right? I mean, many experts have commented they seem to focus on nuclear power and nuclear weapons as
according to testimony from credible military officials, they have turned on and off at will our silos in Montana and elsewhere. And that, I mean, and by the way, that's why that was such a big deal with the Chinese air balloon. I mean, they just happened to float right over a highly sensitive nuclear facility in Montana, and and the Biden administration did nothing. Well,
you'll like our Tuesday show, which is going to be on Curtis LeMay and his use or desire to use nuclear weapons as part of the dispute about Curtis LeMay, and we're going to get into that on Tuesday with Eric. So you may want to tune into that LeMay episode, because it covers a little bit about this, including, Nagasaki and Hiroshima and stuff like that.
Rich, before you go, because I know you're way over on time already, can we burn through just a couple rants and super chats that are mentioning you specifically, just to, Okay, here we go. Rich, can you explain the vitriol coming from the DeSantis camp? They're like the left.
I think that first of all, so many of them have this reputation. It's just that they've been hiding like chameleons for years under the Trump administration and the Trump era that people forgot. But a lot of these people are recycled from the Cruz camp. They've always been nasty SOBs. Ken Cuccinelli has long been known as an asshole. I'm sorry, pardon my French, guys, but he is not a cool dude. I think what happened is there's a lot of, and then there's the newer generation that also a lot of vitriol coming from. These are people who, frankly, were either ignored by or expelled from Trump world. They had nowhere else to go. The Ann Coulters of the world felt like they weren't given enough credit. They didn't sell enough books during the Trump era, so they're just really mad and bitter. And now that they feel, I mean, I'm telling you guys, I've received like midnight phone calls from these people, drunk and rambling, and like my wife had to, and one of them you know very well. My wife had to tell this woman, like, I don't care who the hell you are. You ever call my husband drunk and cursing in the middle of the night? We have children, you crazy nutcase. I mean, this is the kind of stuff you think it's bad on Twitter, guys. Wait until they get a hold of your cell phone number. They're just angry, and they're getting more angry because it's starting to dawn on some of them. Some of them I consider friends. It's starting to dawn on them that they hitched their wagon to a sinking ship.
And also the inevitability of a guy who had 85 million votes the last time, and as we discussed the previous visit, may have 115 million votes this time.
That's right.
Coming out of the gate. Yeah. How do you overcome a beast from the East who's coming out with 110, 115 million votes, bro?
Yeah.
All right. Rich, what are the odds of RFK Jr. suffering the same fate as his father and uncle?
You know, that depends on how far he gets in this journey of his. I think that, Biden has obviously the overwhelming advantage. But if, something was to happen and RFK starts to put some W's up on the board, I don't put anything past these people.
No.
And if he really becomes a threat to their political or their electoral viability, he's going the way of the rest of them. I'm sorry. I don't mean to sound insensitive, but these people are in the waning stages of a failed regime, a failed power structure. And all throughout history, we are not exempt from the laws of nature and nature's God. This is how this works. And on the way down, they hurt a lot of people in an attempt to claw and hold on. I think that we started, and Mark probably agrees, the beginning of this period where they felt like, we can get away with killing an American president or assassinating an American president. And now we're getting to this end of this stage in our history. And it'll, that 2024 really will decide whether or not they truly got away with it, or, are we going to, turn the page on that chapter and kind of take back our sovereignty?
I think they did with Nixon. I really do. Mark and I have talked about it. Nixon was assassinated, in our opinion.
Politically
assassinated. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Nixon's like the last.
Two questions. One, I think that Trump should simply have a bumper sticker campaign that says, "Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?" Keep it simple, stupid. KISS. Number two, can anyone in this country imagine an unrestrained second Biden term after the first 4 years of absolute unrestrained
We're
Biden?
All going to jail.
We're
all going.
Thank you.
We're all going to jail. We're all going to a gulag. They're putting us somewhere, brother.
They merely have attempted to show us what they were going to take the mask off in the second term. They've shown us a little bit in the first term to show us what it's going to be like.
Yeah, and
if you don't like the color of Trump's hair, you may have some other ideas about which way to vote. If
Joe
that's
Biden's ex-husband just did an interview with Newsmax. If you guys didn't see it, you should.
I want to see that.
It was highly illuminating. So, I mean, basically, Biden, tells the guy, give her this house. It's not even one of the other houses that she particularly even wanted, because there were some that were worth a lot. Back in 82, this house was worth like 50 grand, but she wanted the money for something. And Biden was like, "You're going to give her this house." And he's like, "What do you dude, get out of my face. What the hell are you going to do?" 2 months later, he's indicted. He gets his friend, it's the Justice Department, to indict him. They've been this kind of
doing it
a long time. And guys, Unchained,
yeah,
I weep for the future. These people have to learn a lesson. That's really what 2024 is all about. Do you think it's all right to assassinate politically or their lives? Do you think it's all right for the for the bureaucratic state to do that when they want, or do you believe that voters are the sovereign in this country? That will be answered by 2024, because if they get away with it,
we're done.
It's over.
Done.
It's over. It's over. I'm sorry. Yeah. So
right, very quickly,
go ahead.
Couple more. Gumbasto, I've got to bring this one up, Mark, because it's $100 Rumble rant. You guys are great.
Oh, Rumble.
So Gumbasto or Ron Pinta, great guy, thank you.
Tip of the hat.
Tay-Tone, question for Rich. How does the bust vote compare to the McCain/GOP's share of the vote that will vote against him in Arizona and Georgia?
That's a great question. And just so people know what he's talking about, for months we've been measuring, because the sole question electorally this year for me there's very clearly a vote that only comes out for Donald Trump. And there's also a part of that coalition that comes out. If they do, they could vote for Barack Obama. They could vote for an RFK. They could even vote for a Joe Biden under the right circumstances. But they will not vote Republican anyone other than Donald Trump. So we have been for months and months nationally and in these battleground states measuring how big that is compared to the never Trump vote. We now know, and it does differ in different states, but we now know that the Trump or bust vote dwarfs the never Trump vote. Dwarfs it. We're talking about on a national level, we're talking about over 15 million people compared to like less than 6 million. So it's a dwarf. And I'm telling you, I said it today, that I don't think a traditional Republican, non-Trump Republican can win a presidential election in this country anymore. It would require a massive drop off in Democratic turnout, and that's never going to happen again in the age of vote by mail. Ever again. So you either bring these people into the fold, and you should have been doing that for 6 years, but you didn't. So now you have a last ditch effort to do it, or you get your ass kicked. It's really that simple. Look at the polls, guys. We got Dave from Suffolk University now using the term Trump or bust. We have the Beacon Research guys who poll Tennessee and Kentucky. They're even measuring it. All of the underperformance, Iowa polls came out. Ohio polls, just another one today. DeSantis is basically tied in these states with Biden, states that Trump is ahead by 10 points. It's not Iowa, Ohio. They all go back to being razor thin battleground states without Donald Trump. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, they're gone. They're gone. Go back to Republicans losing them by 6 to 12 points on any given season. And that's what they
want. That's why they want to put him in jail, and that's why they're tying him up in court. I mean,
that's right.
We're going to see there's going to be the most fascinating constitutional election in American history.
Yeah. It is a fascinating time to be alive. Scary, but fascinating.
Locals tip, maybe more of what are the odds question. How likely is it the deep state blob of turpitude? Thank you, James Howard Kunstler. Waits until after the convention to dump Joe so the party picks up the replacement nominee without the pesky input of the great unwashed voters?
Wow, that's a really good question. First, I would love to do more. What are the odds? That's up to Barnes. Right now, we got it at 1 per month. I would do it every Monday. I love it. But, Barnes has obligations. I do too. But when we get closer to the election, when we get closer to the election, we will start to do more of them. All right. Even during the primary season, just so people know. That's just how we do it. And then the second part of that is, I'm curious whether you guys agree with me, but I actually do think for Democrats, because they have super delegates, it still puts them in a bad position to do it before convention. If Joe is taken out in that like Goldilocks zone of we have no choice, we have to hurry up, we have to replace him quick, then it takes the pressure off some of those super delegates to do something. But again,
how many programs do you think they have in waiting to take him out in various unrehearsed or rehearsed?
I'm telling you, Mark, they
could go operation this, operation that, operate. They're not just going to be caught with their pants down, Rich. They are going to pull lever A, lever B, lever C, whatever they decide to pull, and it's going to be everyone in lockstep like the Third Reich, like they usually do.
That's the hive mind. That's what they are. That's what we call them. And I'm telling you, the reason they're not yet is because with all of his problems, all of his flaws, all of his corruption, he is still the strongest polling Democrat against Donald Trump. He is. Right. I know people go, what? Michelle Obama, what about her? She's not running. But if Gavin Newsom, when we polled against Trump last time, the Biden-Trump matchup at that time was kind of competitive. He was not competitive against Gavin Newsom. He was actually losing to Trump by 2 points more than Kamala. So, I mean, and it wasn't just name recognition, because there were people who were telling us, I'll vote for Joe Biden. And then saying later, 2 questions later, I would vote for Trump over Gavin Newsom. So there is an overlap there. Wow. But the minute that changes, The minute it becomes like someone else is a more viable option than Joe Biden, they'll start to cut him. That's when you have to keep an eye out for.
Well, what if
them cutting him.
RFK was that threat? Because I do think
RFK is a problem for Trump.
Yes.
Oh my God, he's the biggest problem for Trump.
I agree.
But they'll never accept him. And
Well,
so
can Cornell West pull enough votes of the black Democratic plantation voters of the Democratic Party to damage them in South Carolina and other places?
Oh, you mean in the primary?
Yes, of
Well,
course.
he's going to run for the Green nomination. So he was running as a reformist, or I think not reform, the People's Party. But then he decided, no, I'm going to go to the Green. So now he'll have his own nomination process. He won't be running with them. So, Biden got away. He skated on that. Now, the downside for Biden is we've polled this. West hurts Biden. He does.
Oh, that's
so
what I'm getting at. Yeah.
He's already losing to Trump as it is with Cornell West on the general ticket.
And West is black. I mean, he's a black intellectual. I mean, he is going to hurt him in his most needed spots.
And he won't pull and West wouldn't pull a single vote from Trump.
No.
So it's 100% for Biden.
I like West more than I like RFK Jr.
Yeah, you'll support West all day.
Oh yeah, I love Cornell West.
He's a nice guy.
He's a great guy, brother.
He's a nice guy. He
Yeah.
is a nice guy. I don't know how many people know him and have met him, but I'm here to tell you
that Anderson Cooper interview was fascinating. Cornell West talking about anti-war.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I did see some of it.
Yeah.
I saw his C-SPAN. I thought he acquitted himself really well.
He's
on that C-SPAN.
He's smooth. He's been.
It was a love fest with this MAGA. He said, "I consider myself a MAGA right-wing, Trump-loving." And by the end of the 3 to 5 minute exchange, these two were it was a love fest. And he was like, "Man, you need to come over to MAGA." He's like, "You really belong over here with us." He's like, "You just don't know it." And it is easy. I have seen Cornell West before. It's easy when you're exchanging and talking with him.
Yes.
He comes across as a truly caring person.
He's been a professor he's been dealing with students, Rich, for 35, 40 years, whether it's Princeton or other Ivy League schools. He knows how to work a room, for Christ's sakes.
And whether you agree with him or not, Mark, you do have the true sense that you're both trying to reach the same place. You just disagree on how to get there. And by the way,
he's anti-war, and
he's earnest.
Our side was anti-war. Yeah.
And he's very sincere. You know, I mean, he's truly is sincere. I know that I've said this before, and people are like, "What, dude? How could you like somebody like Cornell West? He's a nutcase. He's totally he's not really. His ideas I think his prescriptions are wrong. But where we're all trying to get, he's got a lot in common with Trump. A lot in common with MAGA. Period.
Yep.
This is a valid point I want to make on that, because I talked about this with Mickey Willis too. Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks is kind of going through some things right now. Is she going to politically align with MAGA? No. But I think we're at the point now we have to look to people, even if we don't agree in the prescription, as you put it, Rich, we've got to agree with people who at least acknowledge what the hell truth is. Yeah. Can we at least get to the point of no, that is not a woman. No, this is not. At least acknowledge, and then we can argue about what to do with it. But I do appreciate people who are at least being honest.
Yeah, I agree. I want to give you the example of Soviet science versus Darwin. There was a guy named Lamarck who was a scientist in the Soviet Union, and they had an anti-capitalist science that was anti-Darwinian that said you could develop acquired characteristics during your lifetime and pass them on to the next generation of children. In other words, the example was the blacksmith who develops huge muscles by using a hammer on an anvil. The Lamarckians said you can pass on those huge muscles that he developed as a blacksmith to his children. Darwin said no. And that war lasted between the Soviets and the West for many, many years. And that Soviet science finally collapsed on its own insanity. And it's very similar to where we are today. I'll just leave it at that.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Last super chat for you, Rich. And sorry that we kept you too
long.
long.
This is cool. This is cool.
Can you poll people with increasingly hardcore activities to win an election where you only see the following question you answered would do X to get a sample of how far the extremes would go. I think that's kind of what you're talking
That's
about.
kind of what we were getting at, isn't it? Yeah, right.
Right. That's what we were
kinda
talking
getting
about.
at. Yes, yeah. And I am gonna
We
explore.
got to
this
do
more.
this, Rich. We got to do
Yeah.
this. I think this is what people are interested in. How far these maniacs are willing to go, because
I'm gonna take a heat from this.
No,
Which I
you
love.
will, but you will get some
I
heat
love
out of it.
heat. Yeah, I love it.
Like this will be a poll that they'll be bringing up on the Hill. You
I
might get
like
Russell Brand
they
types to bring
this.
it up.
Right. Yes.
This is the kind of thing
yeah.
that seizes the public's
Yep.
imagination. Like, ooh,
I haven't
what?
been on
What?
Russell yet. Haven't been on Russell.
Well, there you go.
It's a shame too because I loved him on Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Hilarious.
This is going to blow up the People's Pundit to another level.
Yeah, Jimmy Dore will
Jimmy
seize right
Dore
on
will
this.
eat this
I
up,
promise.
and the Gray Zone will have Rich on. I mean, these questions will, I think, generate in a pop
Blow
culture.
stuff
in a
up.
pop culture.
Yeah, Mark, we got to get together on this and chat.
Let's
more
get
about
together
it.
on this.
Yeah.
If you can make it down to Montgomery, Alabama, I'd like to
Oh
have you.
yeah,
I want to have you on the panel so we can discuss this with the people we're going to have, celebrity guests and different people down there in Alabama, Rich.
Yeah, Laura wanted to. She did tell me about this. We could talk more about this, but
Right, we're going to do a live show down there.
She wanted to make this happen. She liked.
Yeah, I want to make this happen and have you on the panel along with some other guests.
And I haven't been to Alabama in years. Love
Yeah, me
Montgomery.
neither.
I love Montgomery. I do. Alabama was great. Even when I was back in the Army and was in Fort Benning. Oh, now we're not allowed to call it that. I used to sneak across the border all the time. And Alabama was great. It's just, and a lot of people who lived off of base, they would actually live in Alabama because it was cheaper to live there, than it was to live in Georgia. But that's how I first got my very first taste of Alabama. And then, of course, the history is just huge. I love it.
Right. Well, we're going to cover the history in the live episode of some conspiracies and oddities, Huntsville, NASA.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of weirdness in terms of Alabama that we're going to get into.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, we'll talk more about this.
Yeah.
And next national poll I do, I would like to put something like this in there because I totally understand number one, what you're saying, and number two, the value of it. And we did start to do stuff like that, and then something happened. Everybody's conversation was pivoting away from election integrity issues into other things, so that's why we kind of stopped it. But we were on that track for a while, and
I love these kind of polls. I mean, I don't think there's enough of them. I mean, they're
afraid, Mark. They're afraid.
They're afraid. Yeah, they're afraid.
That's the same thing. I'm like, why am I the only one polling people's self-reported impacts of like vaccine adverse effects for a year and a half? And finally, I think it was Rasmussen jumped on it. I had a guy come to me and say, I've called around and very well-known pollsters that all of you all know that you consider to be more fair-minded than some of these university pollsters and media pollsters. They refuse to do a simple poll for these people about, do you know anyone who has died as a result of the COVID vaccine?
Wow.
Nobody would do it. And what we did was take the CDC and the FDA's, how they monitor adverse effects with COVID. We said, I experienced mild side effects or a mild adverse effect that did not interrupt my daily activity. Moderate is something that hindered your daily activity. Severe is something that prevented your daily activity, because I noticed with COVID, they were not doing specific conditions. Specific conditions were falling in those three categories. And we tracked that for a long time, and we were the only ones who did. And by the way, because we were the first ones to identify that there was very clearly a relationship between age and gender. And especially the younger you got, the more likely you were to report a more severe adverse effect. The older you were, the less likely you were to report an adverse effect, which was, to me, it jumped at me for months and months and months. It was the same relationship. One survey, maybe it's a one-off, it's noise. 2 surveys, you may be onto something. 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, you're finding the same trend with age. It's real. Then lo and behold, we started seeing that published in papers, right? So
let's join forces, because my editorial skills will allow me to write these questions that I think you can translate into polling questions.
Yeah,
They're not going to be the final thing, but I think you'll get the idea from my questions.
I think you should. You should send them to me, and I like
Okay.
Eric's idea of asking them in what we call matrix format. So
Yeah.
you're going to give it to them a little bit as time. It's really one question. Hey, listen, we want to ask you a series of things. Be honest, and you really gotta, give because they're going to start to be able to tolerate some of these intrusions more as you go on, as you progress through the questions. If you just hit them right away with the worst, most offensive one,
You need some polling foreplay there, Rich.
You need foreplay, exactly.
And you also
ladies,
have to point
you know what
both
we're
sides.
talking about.
It's got to be literally the opposite candidate or the
I
other
can't just
side.
run all aggressive in on you. I gotta get you ready for it, ladies. All this, you get it totally. Send them to me. I'm dying.
Okay,
to check
all right.
them out, Mark. I think it's a good idea. I really do.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, dude, Rich, thank you so much, man.
Oh,
Yeah,
Thank
say hello
you
to your
for
wife
patience.
for us and try to
I
find a
will.
babysitter for the weekend, for Labor Day weekend. And,
Yeah, that's the hang up. She wants to go.
Oh, well, there you go. Then we got it
That would be
covered.
great. You got to find.
We
a
got to
babysitter.
try to find somebody.
How old are the kids? How old are your kids?
Well, the youngest one is the issue. He will be 4. So yeah, the other two, I'll tell you what, the other two, they're not. One's 4, he's just turned 14. The other one's about to turn 12. They're both so mature. I would let them sit them by themselves. They can handle themselves and always, have been raised that way. But the other one's so little, they're not ready to handle themselves. And the little one, that may be the solution, but we'll see. I know she's a lot more paranoid than I am. You know what I mean, brother?
I understand.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll see you
thank you,
guys.
sir.
Enjoy your Friday.
Thank you, buddy.
See
Down
you all
goes
soon.
Frazier.
Thanks for having me.
Down goes Frazier.
Down goes Frazier. You're gonna make me go back and watch that later.
I'm going to
today.
watch it tonight. Well, I have to watch Dr. Strangelove tonight because of the Curtis LeMay episode on Tuesday.
What's that? Tuesday? You said that's gonna be.
Yeah,
Tuesday?
we're going to do
Yes.
LeMay.
I have to check that out. That'd be cool.
30
guys.
seconds over Tokyo. I got a double feature tonight with 30 seconds over Tokyo.
Nice.
Dr. Strangelove.
Nice.
Yep.
All right, gentlemen.
All right.
See you
Thank you,
soon.
sir.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
See you.
All the best, guys.
And now back to our show. When we last left off, Hunley and Grobert were discussing something. What were we
We're
talking-
discussing super chats because
Oh, the super chats. Okay, go. Hunley. You
people
got-
would like to
I like
get into the conversation.
Wally World hat. I like
Yep.
my National
Love it.
Lampoon's Vacations hat.
Love it. Looks good. Gumbasto said, look up Operation Bluebeam by Canadian source. And I
Okay.
think that's
I've heard of that.
dealing with the UFO type of things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
We'll look that up.
hold on. Let me mute you and then myself because I'm hearing the gorbling. Okay. Hopefully I don't have that overlap anymore. We got a tip from locals. What are your thoughts on everything is a rich man's trick?
It's got a lot of mistakes in it, and it's British.
Oh, that's right.
It's my answer to any of these things. It's British.
And,
I mean, like I pointed out in the last episode with Oppenheimer, having 50 stars on a 48-star flag. I know it's meaningless to some people,
Mhm.
but it's historically inaccurate. And that's because the British. Oh, by the way, I learned that he left off 85 different post-production credits at the end of the credits of the film of 85 different people. And I believe it was because of the running time of the film, which allowed half the money, which is a constant problem if you go into a 3-hour film. You can only show it twice in a theater as opposed to 3 screenings, which happens to any. That's why films are the length that they are. But in an attempt to reduce the running time, he cut 85 people out of the credits. That I've never heard of. That is a low blow to the people who did.
That is.
Wow.
You're on IMDb. I'll just look it up later.
Yeah. Wow.
Ouch.
Low blow.
Yeah, it is. CE 399 locals sent us a $20
See,
tip.
$3.99. Commission exhibit $3.99. It's a magic bullet.
Oh, I didn't put it together.
I
yet.
know. That's what I'm telling you. I know.
Awesome. Keep up the good work. Well, thank
Wow.
you.
Thank you for that CE 399. Pristine
And-
bullet. It's a pristine magic bullet.
Okay. This one's a nice pop culture. Mark, what's your opinion What was your opinion at the time of Jackie's decision to leave the Stern
Oh
show?
my God. Oh Jesus. Well, Jackie was bitter. First of all, Jackie was an alcoholic, and Stern was getting frustrated with his addiction. But that being said, Jackie and I would meet at the Friars Club in New York right after the show for lunch. And the Friars Club just closed in New York. And I was surprised and saddened to see that, because we used to go, not me and him, but me and some other people used to go when we were hungover. They had an old masseuse. What's a male masseuse? A masseuse, right? A male masseuse.
Masseuse.
We used to get massages there when we were out drinking all night. We'd come there for massages. But Jackie and I used to go to, Jackie and I would meet for lunch after the Stern show, and he would show me his notebook. And in that notebook, handwritten, was every word that Howard Stern said for the entire show. And he would stay underneath the desk, showing Stern his notebook, his handwritten jokes to Stern. And I was shocked to see right after the show that he had written almost every single word that Stern had said.
Wow. Question about that. If he, okay, I got to ask this. If
I got to
if he
give him
was
credit for that. I mean,
no,
people
it's
don't
huge.
know. People don't know how much Jackie Martling did for that show.
Well, I called him a joke man, I guess, for a reason.
Well, he did have joke albums, and he did have a stand-up career as a stand-up guy who just did jokes. It wasn't the greatest stand-up career of all time, but he did have a savant kind of brain of just, and I don't have that, of just a joke writing and joke telling.
Well, my question is, okay, if his alcoholism was a problem, why the hell did Stern replace him with Artie Lang?
Apparently, he likes to have type of people around him. He really likes to have damage. It must be an ego thing for Stern. You know,
I guess it's just it's
maybe an ego.
weird.
He's got these damaged people he can abuse.
Wow, that is sad. Hi guys, good to see you, Mark. Have you heard Dylan's Shadow Kingdom yet? And
I have
do you
not.
like it?
I have not. I am looking forward to hearing it. I am not. It's a little difficult for me because his voice is so shot that I decided not to see him anymore live, and I decided that I couldn't listen to some of the more recent albums because it was just cringeworthy. And nobody worships Bob more than me. It's just become very difficult for me because his voice is so raspy to listen to some of the newer stuff.
Maybe you should do like a little. Well, I mean, Lou Reed was sometimes did a spoken word almost tie-in. I wonder if that could be a way to go.
Bob has smoked his whole life, and it's taken an effect on his.
That's too bad.
His throat.
Sir Lawrence, I'm working on a musical about Mark called Hair. This is the dawning of the age of America's untold stories.
Don't quit your day job, Sir Lawrence.
Greetings. I've had a couple of beverages, but I want to ask Mark, aren't there probably a number of tie-ins that are not conspiratorial, as folks say it's a small world?
Oh,
How
yeah,
about
of course.
a bit on deep state UFO? Yeah, well, we've said that a lot.
I said if everything's a conspiracy, nothing's a conspiracy. There's a lot of stuff that happens by circumstance. And
go read our comments on James Earl Ray and read the comments on the Marilyn Monroe episode.
Yeah,
and
people torture me over Marilyn Monroe and James Earl Ray. I'm sorry, I don't bite on every single apple, and it doesn't mean I'm right. It's just my investigation is sometimes does not lead down that road, and sometimes it does. I just don't go along with every single thing. I'd have to show myself where the connections are.
That's what I liked about Palomaro too, by the way. Is he seems to be in that.
It's the same way.
Camp too, like
Jim Genio. I mean, most of these guys are, everything can't be conspiratorial. I mean, it's just impossible. You got to draw the line somewhere. And if I don't see it, I don't see it. I mean, as I said, James Earl Ray, he got hired. He did the shooting. He escaped. He had multiple passports. I've never seen a more clean conspiracy to killing a political person like the Martin Luther King killing. Apparently, that's not enough for some people. It's got to go to J. Edgar Hoover. It's got to go to LBJ, which it's, both of these people benefited. Both of them hated MLK. But it wasn't necessary. There was a group of businessmen who did it for them and executed Martin Luther King by hiring someone to do the job. Not every conspiracy is started at the Pentagon.
There's also people who I feel read into things. Like I tweeted out shared RFK's tweet about the service. And one of the tweets that replied back, I was shocked by, and they said, yeah, I find it very mind-boggling, or whatever I said, that he had a thinly disguised white supremacist message in that, because he stated 14 days is the normal time to get a response, and this took 88 days. And apparently, and I had to look it up, is like, oh God, 1488 is symbolism for the 14th. And I'm like, nobody thinks of this crap.
Don't waste your time.
I know, but I'm just, you read that kind of thing. And
Right, I see what you're
it's
saying.
like, oh my God, really? Really? Come on.
Come on.
Let me see. Innocent people sitting in jail for I'm not going to say it. I believe in God, not Springsteen.
That's funny. Me too. Me too.
If the Democrats cancel Trump from the ballot, can we write him in? Or what independent effort split the vote between Trump and DeSantis?
Well, neither one of those things can occur because, as Barnes has pointed out, he's constitutionally the candidate, regardless of where he is, on the moon, in a jail, or anywhere else. So
Eugene Debs.
DeSantis doesn't have any connection to any of this stuff. I mean, he's going to. Excuse me?
Would that be a good untold story, Eugene Debs?
I guess we could do it. I mean, he's a socialist. I mean, you want to get into the socialist politics of Eugene Debs, other than him being.
I just meant the interesting factor of, they was in prison and ran around.
Story, though. The point of the matter is, it doesn't matter where Trump is. He's going to be the nominee of the Republican Party, short of him losing his life somehow. The fact that he's in jail on bail, taking snail mail or whatever the Dale thing is, he's going to be the nominee. And, whether he's in jail or not is not going to change that, Eric.
Hey, Joe Exotic is running for president, for God's sake, from prison.
Okay.
So there we go.
There are people who won neighborhood council seats in D.C. From prison in D.C. Last year. They ran from prison.
Wow.
And won.
Is everyone on strike?
Yeah, everyone
Pretty
now.
much.
The hotel workers are on strike. Anytime there's a Democratic administration, one thing happens is prices go insane. And then the unions who can't afford to pay for bread anymore go on strike. So now the hotel workers are on strike, and Taylor Swift is supposedly coming here to play this SoFi Stadium, and they want to pressure her not to cross picket lines to play this show. She couldn't care less because she's going to generate billions, with this tour. So they're on strike, SAG's on strike, Writers Guild's on strike, and I think now UPS is going to go on strike out here, or nationally. I'm not sure how vast the scope is.
Yeah, that's very close. I think end of the month is the final bit. So they made headway. They've made headway in the UPS strike.
Well, just to put up the SAG Writers Guild versus the studio strike, Gavin Newsom volunteered to settle the whole thing himself. And both sides said, thank you very much, but we don't need your help. Both sides said, we're not interested in Gavin Newsom coming in as a broker.
Or both.
Or both.
Sure, yeah. Anyway, from my understanding, the UPS, the company has agreed to put air conditioning in all the vehicles, which is a big factor. And
it was an interesting little anecdote, but I have a guy, right, for years that I know the guy who's my UPS guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to pull out of my driveway yesterday. I'm in a hurry, and there is this truck blocking me, and he's in the back of the truck, and I can't pull out. And he looks, and he goes, "Hey, Mark," and he comes over and delivers the package to my window of my car in my driveway. And I go, "Oh, thank you, Jimmy." And he goes, "Do you mind if I go in the building? I got 2 other packages." And I go, "All right, go ahead." Now I'm blocked by this UPS truck while he delivers 2 additional packages to my place, which is kind of funny. But the point is, he was sweating profusely. The doors were open, and it's just a tin box of heat in there that's like a toaster oven.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be pretty unbearable.
It's ridiculous.
Does Fauci get government security? I don't know if he does anymore, but I believe he did.
He probably does. I mean, this RFK thing is so egregious. I mean, I know where he is. I know where he lives. I know where he goes in the morning. I know physically what his daily routine is like in Malibu. And if I know it, there's other people who know it.
Yeah, I mean, I find it mind-blowing even if he's not technically eligible, even if the law, it's like the optics are so bad.
They don't care about optics, bro. They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care about freaking optics. I didn't know they changed the law.
Mm.
And something happened in 2017. Mike Pence doesn't have it now, but that's another issue. Vice presidents only get it for 6 months after they leave. But every candidate, like I said, under LBJ, and they told LBJ that he didn't have. This is an interesting sidelight because I remember reading this in Dick Goodwin's memoir. One of their memoirs, that they told LBJ didn't have the legal right to do it. And he said, God damn it, I've got the right to do it. I'm going to do it. And he did it anyway, without having the legal authority to do what he did. And then the Congress rubber stamped it a couple of months later, to make it this law that's now disappeared, apparently. Yeah.
You guys need to read The Road Not Taken by Harry Turtledove. I've read to Harry Turtledove, Guns of the South, which is a fascinating alternate.
Who is Harry Turtledove? That's one of the greatest names of all time.
He's a sci-fi writer. He's famous for doing alternate history. His most famous book is Guns of the South, under the premise that Robert E. Lee got machine guns.
Oh, that's interesting. I guess.
And well, yeah, but it was like what would happen because the South obviously won because they had the war, and everything collapsed on its own anyway.
Well, I mean, to be honest, very late in the war, the Gatling gun comes into play. Unfortunately, it's on a train car, but it does have an impact on the war, the Gatling gun, because it's very late. But according to different people who are historians, it did have an effect.
Sure.
And that was one of the first type of machine guns.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, that shredded a lot of people.
Still need 7,500 people to subscribe. Yep, I agree.
Well, if 7,500 people come to Montgomery, then let them come to Montgomery.
No, you know what, folks? No.
Bing.
Get some subscriptions. Let's see if we can be celebrating our 100,000 and Montgomery. I think it's possible.
Humanly
especially
possible.
If
they put a man on the moon, Hunley.
Surely,
don't call me Shirley. We could get 100,000 before we go to Memphis.
I think
before we go to Montgomery.
I think it's a good goal, and it'll be awesome to celebrate that with everybody there. I mean,
if we get that thing, we could bring that thing with us. Whatever that doorbell is that they give you, we could bring the thing.
Silver play button.
But it would be like bringing the Stanley Cup trophy.
Yes.
Like for the NHL, we could bring it with us to Montgomery.
So
let people touch it, drink out of it. What does it look like? Is it a thing we can put beer in?
It's a silver play button. It's a plaque, but
it's not like a cup. It's not a cup.
No. Everyone hurry up though, because we need to actually get it made, get it shipped to us so I can drive it down there.
Right. How big is it? Is it
like a large book? Yeah. You'll hang it on the wall by your key or something, probably.
Yeah. By the way, if people want to come to Montgomery, you can send the thing to Hunley. There's a link somewhere, and tickets can be bought. You can get a refund if you don't make it. You
can go to ericunley.com.
So it's not a risky venture if you want to sign up for this thing.
No, I've already done one refund. So I mean, somebody bought the ticket. They
Not a big deal. Not a big deal.
Didn't use the locals discount. And then they found the locals discount, so they did another ticket, and I refunded the first. It's fine. But the Montgomery tickets, you can just go to erichunley.com/Montgomery 2023.
Right. Oh, that's simple. That's simple.
We're looking to make it a yearly thing if it goes off well. And Helton, aka Faster Man, I wanted to give you guys a $5 super chat, but I am broke, so can I borrow $20?
That's funny. Well, we owe you 15.
There you go. BTK, push the truth, point out who lied, like Fauci and Biden. How do we push the truth out there without media interference? Everyone see Sound of Freedom. I haven't seen it yet. I do want to see it.
I haven't seen it, but I recommend Plandemic 3 in the meantime on Rumble, Mickey Willis's film. I really, really, really
very good
that film.
Leo disagrees with you. No, Dylan's voice is not what you said. I agree with his terrible stuff and voice, but this one is very different. So
okay. Maybe he's using AI. I'll listen to it, but I'm just
there are some who are doing some stuff like that.
I know. Okay. Well, we'll see.
That'd be interesting. Angie, found your show about a year ago. Don't miss any episodes. Love you guys and the stories you cover.
When did we start this thing? A year ago, right? Last August?
No, we started it
I'm in a
Well-
fog about this. It all seems like
Okay, well,
show
this
after
channel that we're on right now, because we had to restart it,
right.
was the day after Alec Baldwin shot Helena Hutchins. So October 22nd, I believe, 2021. So we're headed into,
Second year will be October 21st.
yeah, second year of our first run. It was probably in September, actually, that we
Right.
started the,
That's what I think.
but you and I
This
first,
thing in Montgomery may be our second anniversary.
it's close. It
Okay.
is close. It is close.
Close, all right.
We first did our show together, I think April of 2021 on my original channel.
Oh my God, I'm exhausted. That's
I
incredible.
know. You are exhausting. I'm sorry. I'm late. Sorry. Here's some monies for being awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Why would RFK Jr. insist on having the government protect him when it was the government who killed his father and uncle?
You know, there is an argument to be made about that because the Secret Service was, according to Vince and myself, involved in the assassination of his own uncle. So I don't know why he would want to use them other than to secure perimeters and stuff like that, you know, for bigger speaking engagements. But he's got his own security firm in case, led by a pretty famous guy from out here. He's got his own security team. But again, I agree. They're kind of sketchy. I wouldn't trust those guys in a million years. But maybe it's for the better.
Gavin, does he have Gavin? I forgot the last
Yeah.
name.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. That guy wrote the book Gift of
Gavin
Fear.
Gavin
Becker.
Gavin DeBecker. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, Gift of Fear guy.
Yeah.
Oh God, have you ever read that?
No.
Talking about a guy born into security.
Mm-hmm.
He literally watched his mother shoot his father as a child. So that's his background. It was like, woof, dark stuff.
James Elroy had the same thing.
Yeah. Tim's claim.
I mean, I think Elroy's mother was killed.
She was.
But
Yeah.
I was thinking of Ty Cobb, the shortstop of the Tigers, whose father killed his wife. His father killed his mother, who was having an affair with a guy. Shotgun blast, I think.
Yeah, lovely. Tim's claim they can prevent Trump from running. Well, they're trying, but
I don't know. Where does that happen other than physically tying him up in a courtroom or putting him in jail? I guess you can stop a man from physically running.
yeah. Good luck. Regarding the response to Eric's tweet, both sides conjure boogeymen to fight as they try to form an argument as to why they are right. I see a lot of people reading things that just simply aren't there. I agree.
Okay.
Totally agree. Your thoughts on Civil War if Trump jailed?
I mean, at some point, what is the opening shot at Fort Sumter? I mean,
Well, we're in a kind of civil
Yeah,
war now, just without guns.
it's a cold civil war. If there is a cold war with the Russians, it's a cold civil war here.
Yeah, I totally agree. And let's see, we've got Untold Story, Matthew Shepard, not a hate crime.
I've heard that. Yeah, that is true. I don't know if it's an untold story, but I agree.
Thank you, BTK. And last super chat, which brings in the Oswald. Hi, fellers. Hopefully see you all in Montgomery. Oh, I hope we see you
Matthew
too.
West. Yeah. This is Cornell West, illegitimate son, by the way, in case anybody's curious as to Matthew West.
Yeah, I knew that.
He'll be coming to Montgomery. I hope everybody comes to Montgomery.
It's going to be awesome.
It's really going to be fun to go down there and meet everybody and have a panel discussion and a live radio show simultaneously. It's going to be analog meets digital in a lot of ways because Greg from the radio station is old school. And that's going to be both worlds. In other words, we're going to broadcast, record, and have a live radio feed going out. So it's actually the best of analog and digital at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to be live on YouTube or not. I don't know. We'll see what we can pull off, but it'll definitely be recording it and filming it and putting it out. I hope people follow us on Locals at unstructured.locals.com. I'll be doing a grill stream tomorrow. By following, people on Locals who support us, which is $5 a month, $50 a year, get $25 off of the ticket.
How much?
going into Montgomery.
How much?
25. So
Wow, that's a huge chunk.
it literally is. I mean,
Yeah,
it takes you
we know where it's going to be, but we're not releasing the information yet because of for certain security reasons. But you'll be told where it is.
You're welcome, Pat M. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You'll be told. So don't sweat it. It's going to be probably in a hotel in Montgomery.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
And it's helpful to not mention ahead of time because you get some idiots that call ahead and say, do stupid things and try to screw up the event. So we want to make it a little more difficult for them. But on that note, folks, Tuesday, it's going to be Curtis LeMay. Long-awaited episode. And
Yeah.
Mark's got to get to reading.
It's a big story. I got to go read some more stuff. There's a lot of stuff on Curtis LeMay. It's not what you think he is. There's more twists and turns to this weird story.
Kind of like Walker, I'm guessing, or
In a weird way, it's like Walker, in its own story, and Patton in its own story. It's not completely Americana, and he does have his detractors. We'll see.
all right. And we will see everyone Tuesday. If you're on locals, I have a girl stream tomorrow. Hope to see some of you there. And until next time, have a wonderful, wonderful evening.